you know, we're all going to make mistakes and we're all still learning. And it's okay not to have the answer, but it's not okay to give up because you don't have the answer.
Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Richard Thompson, and today we have a guest who I know very, very well. She is my neighbour, Karina Patrick. And for this episode, it's all about parenting, something that I really enjoy talking about, very passionate about. Karina and her husband, Des, have 3 kids, very similar ages to my boys, and we've grown up on the street through this, I guess, this journey of parenting. And today I get the chance to sit down with Karina, talk about what it's like to raise 3 boys for me and for her, for 2 boys and 1 girl. And I'm looking forward to getting into the weeds. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Karina Patrick, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Oh gosh, this is going to be fun. Now, Karina, we are neighbours.
Yes.
We both have, your child stats are 3 children. Tell me about let's give a list of your
my
children's
stats.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 2 boys and a girl. The girl's the youngest. Almost 9-year-old, almost 7-year-old, and now 5-year-old. They're a handful.
So I thought we'd have, I haven't had a guest yet on to talk about parenting generally, and it's something that I really feel passionate about, and I think it's fun not only because of our proximity, but our kids are relatively the same age. I mean, you've got your eldest is the same age as mine, your youngest is the same age as my middle, and I've obviously got a younger one. Yeah. And you've got one in between the 2. So it's like the street's like a Sandlot gang. That it's just ridiculous how many kids are around. But I thought we could maybe today just compare notes a little bit. I want to hear about your side of it in terms of how you perceive parenting and how you have grown through that over the last 9 years. But I think the topic itself I really enjoy. And so
it's a topic that you could just talk about for days. Both in a positive and a negative sense, really. For me, parenting is just the 2 absolute ends of the spectrum. The absolute best thing I've ever done, and I love it so much, but it's the worst at the same time. But I wouldn't not do it. In terms of the worst, it's just you don't think about how you just don't get a break. It's just 24/7 all of the time. Even when they're not with you, you still have to be their parent. You still have to be on call. You know, like as they get older, it gets a little bit easier in terms of you don't need to physically be there with them, but you still need to emotionally be there for them. And you know, if they're over a friend's place at a sleepover or whatever the case may be, you still need to be available if they get sick or upset or scared or, you know, whatever the case may be. So I just, you know, like in theory, you know, that's what it is before you have kids, but until you have them, it's, you know, and it's like you have them and then that's it. You don't get to second guess it. So I think that's the really hard thing for me. It's just sort of, you're almost sort of trapped, I guess, for want of a better word and a better way of saying it. Like you don't get another choice, or if you walk away, then that's just an awful thing, and that's something that you would never conceive. But, well, I mean, I guess some people do, but I definitely wouldn't. And then the other end of the spectrum is just it's the best thing that you could ever do. Having these little people who are not miniature you know, like they've got their own personalities and they grow into their own beings through, you know, just from being them, but also from other influences that you have no control over. And, you know, they're growing up in a different time to what we grew up in. So they're just their own little people. And to be such a huge part of that and see them grow and change and develop and have their own thoughts on things is just...
I think that's what got me as well, where I thought for a long time there were little me's, and then you very quickly realised that, oh wait, they are their own. They are their own person.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that it's almost, you lose authority or you lose power, I guess, of like, you lose control to go, oh, right, I don't really, I have an ability to try to influence, but ultimately it's not up to me anymore. And that's scary as shit.
It is. It is because you know, much as I want them to be their own person, it'd be so much easier if they were just the same person that I was, because, you know, you could be interested in what they're doing and, you know, like you could forethink how they're feeling and be there for them sort of so much more than what you think you can. But, you know, like I've got 2 boys who are obsessed with the Nintendo Switch and video games and Zelda, and I could not care less.
And they're like, Mum, guess what? I just did this, and this.
You'll never believe it.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good, honey.
Yeah. And it's like, just remind me again who this person is and what, you know, like I'm trying to be interested, but.
But do you not think that that's the same when you were young? You were like different medium.
Yeah.
You know, and your parents like, oh, that's great, Karina.
Yeah.
Like,
they did a good job in hiding the fact that they weren't interested, and I'm hoping that I'm doing the same
until they
job.
listen to this episode.
Yeah, they'll be like, oh, okay.
Mum didn't care at all about Zelda.
I do remember when I was really young, I used to have these really vivid dreams every night, and I'd wake up and I'd go through like in great detail telling Mum and Dad all about my dreams, and to their credit, they listened
Wow.
every day. And yeah, it was only much later that they were like, oh, that was really draining.
I can see where your eldest gets that from then.
Oh, he's a talker.
Just keeps talking.
Yeah. But that's the good thing too. So you don't need to know too much about whatever they're talking about, because they're just happy to tell you and happy to have your that attention. Ear and that attention. Yep. And, you know, they're happy, you know, like if I get them to repeat something about whatever it is, they're more than happy to re-explain and go through it again, because they just want you to be there listening to them.
Yeah. Talk about as well the experience where I remember, because your youngest now is going into prep next year.
Yeah.
So you'll then have all 3 at school. And I remember you boasting about that to me.
Early.
And then literally like 3 days later, your little girl breaks her leg. Full cast into the hip. Wheelchair.
We live on a hill. I have 3, just to get from our garage up to our main house is 3 levels. Big sets of stairs to get up to. Even to go through the front door, there's still a set of stairs to get there.
Let alone relatively energetic 5-year-old being constrained to a chair.
And not understanding why, because as you said, we've got this handful of kids around this neighbourhood, so not understanding why the boys are allowed to just run down the street and play with everyone still, and she is confined to the house. It was a big wake-up call to me, because I was boasting to you, just saying how sweet I've got it, and you know I'm almost free, and it really made me realise that even though I'm at a point in my life where I'm sort of trying to discover me again, and you know me outside of being just a mum, your kids still really need you, and your kids are still your number one priority, and whatever you've got going on beyond that, you need to be ready at the drop of a hat to drop it and be there for your kids, because you've made that commitment, you've decided to become a parent. They're the number one. So she was in the cast. It was about 5.5 weeks. Also during that time we all sort of got influenza and were really sick as well, which was awful. Kindy, you know, I was allowed to take her back to kindy, but we had to do limited hours because our kindy, they do a lot of big walks up to there. It's connected to a high school or a school, so they do a lot of walks up to the school. So We really had to limit that. Thankfully, with my job, I was able to bring her into the classes that I teach, and my boss is amazing, so he allows me to have a lot of flexibility, which is good. But, yeah, life was really – it just came to a halt really quickly, and I had to just accept that Fleur at that point in time was my number one priority, and everything else just came second.
Was there a moment in a quiet moment with yourself to go, right, I've got to – because I couldn't imagine the level of patience you would need to manage that, and it'd almost be a point of time where you'd go, okay, at least for me, I would imagine I have to sit down with myself and go, right, I've got to park any sort of aspirations or trying to do anything for myself for 5 weeks, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And just
it literally was that. And it was with everything. Like I couldn't even, like our laundry is downstairs. Even putting a load of washing on was hard because she needed me to move anywhere. Like she had the wheelchair, but the way our house is set up, it's multi-tiered.
Yep.
And so, there'd be so many times where I couldn't even get a load of washing fully put on because she needed me and she was screaming out, and she was, understandably emotional as well and frustrated. And so even over the course of that time, just keeping a tidy house was impossible.
Did you take time in that early stages or throughout do you talk to yourself as a parent, or do you go, or how does your relationship with yourself go with that in that period of time where you're like? It
was a realization that, I just need to take this time, focus on her, put myself sort of second, and knowing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So, and even if it was a case that she was severely disabled for her life, you just have to reassess, restructure your life, and accept that that's, this is the card that you've been dealt, and go with it. And it's funny that, especially when I was pregnant with her, because she was my third, I just had this real insight whilst I was pregnant in that, there's so many risks involved in pregnancy. There's so many outcomes that you can have with what you're going to have with the child. And, I had that real insight when I was pregnant that it's a risk. Every time you decide to have a child and bring somebody else into the world that you have to look after, it's a risk of what you're going to get, and you just have to accept that you've made the decision to have this child. So,
not just I presume you're not talking just about birth, but
no.
And even if you birth a healthy child, there is a risk in until whilst you're alive and they're alive, that there is a risk that you're going to be needed.
Yeah.
Wholly.
Yeah, like it's not just like a recipe of, okay, so you only need to look after your child for 18 years and then you're done and dusted.
Or look after your child for 18 years with the help of kindy or school, or, but it's not maybe not that case. Maybe it's their full time with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's an innate. You innately adopt that, right? Or not? Maybe not everyone, but certainly.
Yeah, I think so. But you just think that you're not going to be the one that has to deal with it. And it's like anything, people who get cancer or unwell or, get in a car crash, everyone lives with that. Well, it won't happen to me.
Yeah, sure.
Which I think you have to live with that. Otherwise, you would just spend your life in, masses of anxiety and fear and not actually live your life to the full. So,
what was for you going from 0 children to 1 to 2, then 2 to 3? What's your take on?
Which is the hardest step?
What was the biggest step? Yeah.
2 to 3.
Right.
Going from 0 to 1, it was hard because you're learning everything's just so new and you're learning it. But at that point in my life, I was just so ready to become a mum. I was so ready. I enjoyed my job, but I didn't love it. So I was ready to not work.
Yeah.
And we had a lot going on in that time of our lives. Like we had my eldest when we were in Melbourne. 4 months later, we moved to Brisbane. So there was a lot of exciting stuff happening. So you just sort of, kind of happily went with the flow. And, when we moved to Brisbane, I came in with a really good mothers group, and all of us were going through the same thing. So you really felt supported in that we were all going through the same thing. And then the jump from 1 to 2, I just felt, because it was quite close.
Yeah.
We had him 23 months later. So it was all pretty fresh. We knew what we were doing. I was already living the life
hamstrung.
You're already nap times and you're already doing really heavy routine times. So adding another one in the mix, it was more like a complication of, when you go to put a kid in the car, who do you put in the car first, the toddler or the baby? That was like the hardest part. 2 to 3 was, all of a sudden you become outnumbered. And my eldest, he wasn't even 4 yet. I had 2 months until he was 4. So that just...
I mean, you're laughing now because they're almost all in prep.
Yeah, but even now, like I don't know about you, but I just find with 3, someone's always upset.
100%.
Either 2 of them are ganging up on one, or one thinks it's not fair that the other one gets a bigger portion of dinner or a different fork, or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's always someone upset.
Yeah.
But at that young age, 3 was, I had essentially 2 toddlers and a newborn I had to look after. We're living here with no family support. They come and visit and they help out when they visit, which is great.
But it's infrequent.
Yeah.
A couple times a year at best.
Yeah, exactly.
I think for me, 0 to 1, certainly on the paternal side, 0 to 1 was not in a negative way, but just a holy shit. I've gone from no responsibility effectively to all the responsibility.
Yeah. And it's that little things like, if you're at home alone with him and you need to duck to the shop, all of a sudden ducking to the shop is a huge outing and something you really need to put thought into just to make sure you go and get milk.
Have you got enough nappies? Is there wipes? How is it in relation to the nap? All that, right?
Yeah.
And then 1 to 2, I thought was not so bad because a little bit, not as much as 0 to 1, because you had to deal with another nap.
Yeah.
I was now working from home at that point, so I was fully in it. But it wasn't just, the one wasn't just, well, he needs to sleep, so we'll nap him now.
Yeah.
You had another element, had another devil in the mix to be able to go, actually, I need to nap him, but this guy. Yeah.
But then you had the bigger gap as well.
That's true. Which helped.
Yeah.
And then the 3rd, I didn't feel it's any different.
Oh, really?
My life's fucking chaotic anyway. It's complete. So you may as well.
And by that time, your others were like running off in the easement with all my kids. So you're all sorted.
And then, to be honest, that like you get to an age where, I don't know, let's say you get to the beach, once they're swim fit and you're like, oh, thank God. Oh, like you got a pool. So it's like once they're all swim fit, it's a lot less stressful.
Yeah.
Now they're of an age, it's almost like they're of a street age.
Yeah.
Once they're of a street age, they're like, I'll be home by dinner.
It's like
no problem.
Get home when it gets dark.
Yeah, totally.
And then if they're not, you're out in the street just yelling
we're
out.
yelling out to them. Who knows what house they're in.
Yeah.
Which is really beautiful. But my youngest is probably just that little bit too young. He wants to be in the street, right? And sometimes I go, just down the side of the road.
Yeah.
But he's probably just about 6 months out from being able to fully fledgedly go, off you go.
Yeah.
But that'll be great when it gets there. Because it's like, we'll see you at 5:30.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
How does your week look like generally? Because your husband is, I guess, he works full time. And before you talked about the week, with that, did you guys have that conversation? You talked about, that your daughter broke a leg, and so you're like, I'm parking everything that I do.
Yeah.
Because that's your role.
Yeah.
did you guys at the start talk about that? Like, you both obviously had your own career aspect. You said that when you fell pregnant with your first, you were ready to leave work and that was your thing. So I guess, what was the communication between the two of you about how life looked in terms of roles and responsibilities?
Because of his role, right from the start, we always knew that he would have to be the breadwinner. And I was never, because I've got a nursing background, and I've never been hugely passionate about nursing. I found roles within it that I've enjoyed. Yeah. But yeah, at the time I got pregnant, I was very ready for a break from it. And I always just had in the back of my head that I would get back into it after we had finished having kids. So I was more than happy to take on the role of, full-time mum, do anything that was, that needed to be done in terms of taking them to appointments or, swimming lessons or, school drop-offs, kindy drop-offs, whatever it may be. I don't think it was ever like a great discussion. It was more just an understanding. But I've never felt that he has just, taken me for granted in that sense. I've always actively stepped up and said, that's going to be my role.
Yeah.
Not because I'm the female, just because.
That's your role.
Yeah. And I always, I wanted to be a mum and I wanted to do.
All the things about it.
Yeah. And I think possibly part of it was my parents, because I'm the youngest child. So my mum went back to work, not super early. I think I was probably about 5, maybe when I started school, she went back to work. But then they worked full time throughout my whole school childhood. And I don't begrudge them of that at all. I think it taught me and my brother and sister a lot of independence at a young age, which I'm trying to teach my kids. But I did, I'd go over a friend's house after school and their mum would be there and, I'd bake them cupcakes for afternoon tea or something. And I think I've always had in the back of my mind that that's really nice. And I think probably part of it was I wanted to do that for my kids. So we never sort of discussed it. And it was like, when my youngest broke her leg, I never even considered that he should stop work to then help out, because my role at the moment is to
full-time.
Be the one full-time, even though I am sort of working in dribs and drabs, but yeah.
And so how has that transition been now as the kids are getting all of them to school age? How have you've mentioned it earlier that you're sort of now at a place of finding yourself. Who is Karina outside of being a mum? How has that journey been?
For a long time, I didn't need to look into myself because I always had in the back of my mind, well, I'm a nurse and that's like my identity and I will get back into that at some stage. And then I did get back into it and realised I really didn't like it. So that's when I really struggled with
interesting.
Who I am. Because
it wasn't that. Yeah.
And then so I had to figure out what I wanted to be, because I knew I didn't just want to be a mum. Like I just didn't want to be a stay-at-home mum. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just I wanted to show my kids that, I contribute to the family more than just staying at home, whilst also being there for them.
Is that a conversation? Is that something that you want to show them, or is it something that you want to show yourself?
A bit of both, I think. Well, I just want something for myself.
Yeah.
It's like when you meet someone and they say, oh, what are your interests? And I really hate sometimes that I can't come up with anything. It's, I like reading and cooking.
Go to the beach.
Going to the movies.
These are great conversations. You're having that at a party, obviously. You meet someone at a party.
It's all the small talk.
Yeah.
Kids' parties.
Yeah.
So I got back into nursing.
Yeah.
Really didn't enjoy it. And I mean, we're in a fortunate position that I don't have to work.
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot easier for me to then make the decision not to go back to nursing.
Does it not make it more challenging for you to find your purpose because you're not forced to? There's no financial pressure for you to go and find something. So it's like you can basically, as long as you adhere to the roles of mum, you can do anything, which then makes it really challenging because it's like I don't know what. It's almost like death by 1,000 options.
When I'm at home and the kids aren't there, I'm not a person who can just sit back and, watch movies or go get my nails done, or I'm a task-based person. I need to have a task to do.
So what has been the process of trying to find your calling or your interests?
What I do. At the same time I was nursing, I was doing a lot of going to the gym a lot with the trainer, and I was also doing a lot of Pilates with the same studio. And I discovered silk aerial Pilates or yoga. And I was doing that and really loved it. I was enjoying being able to get back into proper fitness after having the kids. And then all of a sudden the silks instructor that we had left. Around the same time I was deciding I didn't want to be a nurse anymore. And the trainer at the gym was struggling to find an instructor. And so I just decided that I would do that, not thinking that it's going to be like a massive career, like make a career out of it or anything. It was more just I enjoy doing this. I want to keep doing this week by week. If you can't find anyone else, then I'll just do it. And then that way I get to do what I'm enjoying to do,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I did my aerial silks instructor course and started working there, and liked the fact that I could have both aspects of my life that I wanted to be. Like I could be the working mum, but I could also be the stay-at-home mum. So it just fit perfectly with what I wanted to do, I guess. Plus, I really enjoy it. You get to hang upside down and swing, and it's a lot of fun, and your body feels amazing. So, so that's sort of how it started, and didn't really know if I'd enjoy it, but I really did. From there, I started to realise that there were huge gaps in my knowledge in terms of Pilates and rehabilitation, and I had clients who, everyone's got their own body issues in terms of like injuries or, limitations. And I wanted to help them, and I can help them. But I also knew that if I had more knowledge behind me, then I'd be able to help them more, which is then where I'm at the moment, is where I've just decided next year when my youngest goes off to school, I'm going to go in and study Pilates further and do my diploma. That way I can get further qualified and help people.
Brilliant.
Which, it goes back to nursing. Nursing is helping people.
Yeah.
But on a more personal level and a more long-term level. And it's not just helping people when they're sick, helping them get better. It's being there for them and, similar to probably what you feel with coaching, just that, being on their side and watching them improve and develop and change and get stronger and being on the journey with them.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't, I didn't go searching for it. It just happened at a time of my life that I needed it.
Yeah.
And I've never not enjoyed it. I've never had a day where I've had to drag my feet to work.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, the dream. And I think if financially we weren't able to do that, I don't think I would have ever given myself permission to go and discover that.
Sure.
Because I'm too focused, and it'd be like, no, I have to just keep working and I have no other choice. I've made my decision in life and, so, yeah.
I love that. Well, I think we have to get you back because we haven't even touched on half of the things that I wrote down, including, you know, how we deal with screen time, how we deal with, I think our eldest are very similar in that we say, let's, you know, here's a sport you can do, and they do 2 minutes of it and they say, don't want to do it anymore. And then it's like, great. Well, then where's that line between pushing them to do something that they may enjoy in the future, but they don't enjoy it now?
Yeah.
All those sort of things.
Yeah.
But what's the goal, do you think, as a parent?
For me, it's helping them to discover who they are and being confident and happy within themselves to be who they are before it gets to that point of teenage years where they are going to sort of have a lapse in that confidence. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, whilst also trying to teach them values to make them, you know, good people. But for me, especially because with our eldest, he's definitely quirky, I would say. And I love that about him. And I really am trying to encourage that in him and make him love that about himself so that moving forward he can be confident in that and not question if it's wrong and if it's not, you know, what everyone else is doing, so therefore it's weird or, you know. So, yeah, I think that's the goal for me, is just letting them be their own person and letting them be okay with that and knowing that, you know, we're all going to make mistakes and we're all still learning and it's okay not to have the answer, but it's not okay to give up because you don't have the answer. So that's what I really want them to learn. And everything else, you know, we're here to support them along the way. They're going to learn lessons either with us or at school or whatever, wherever they go, you know, sports teams or, but just being happy within themselves, I think, is the end goal, which is what we all want. Yeah.
I love that. Before we go, quick fire questions.
Okay.
Number one tip for someone looking to be more successful in their life?
I think you need to, first of all, look at what you think success is. For me, I feel, you know, like even if I can go through one day and I tick everything off my to-do list, like I count that as a win and I feel that it's a success. So, you know, you just need to redefine what you think success is. And if you think success is, you know, owning a really successful business, then fantastic. But you need to look within yourself and figure out what success looks like for you and then work. And
it goes back to the standard or what you're trying to achieve with the kids, is that you to be fine with that's how you define it.
Yes.
And not compare it to the outside world and go, this is what this is what success looks like.
Yeah.
And then be so comfortable with that and confident with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And be happy to change it. You know, like the beauty of life is that you can change your mind on anything.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and, you know, like be okay with change and changing your mind. You know, if you've got something you want to work towards, then, you know, like you need to focus on that. But if you get what you want and 5 years down the track you decide that that's not what you want anymore.
That's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Number one tip for someone looking to be happier within themselves?
I think it's the same thing. Like just look within yourself to figure out what's going to make you happy. Don't think, you know, a new pair of shoes is going to make you happy or having a nice house is going to make you happy, because there's always going to be someone who has more than you or better than you or whatever. You need to really look within yourself and think about what values and what things really make you happy and just work towards it. And again, reevaluate it. You know, if having a nice house is going to make you happy and it does, then great. But then in 5 years, you know, you don't like the work of the big house or whatever,
You might want to downsize.
it's just, downsize, and that's
okay.
fine. If that's going to make you happy, then
that's okay.
keep working, keep evaluating. Like one thing in life is not, one sole thing in life isn't going to keep you happy for the rest of your life. You need to just keep evaluating your life and keep evaluating if you actually are happy. Just because you've made it this far and done the things on your checklist, is it still making you happy? You know, you just need to
have that conversation with yourself constantly.
Yeah.
The most influential person in your life?
That's a tough one. I sort of look at my life. I've got different aspects to my life that I reach out to different people for. But in terms of parenting, I have a friend called Kelly who I used to work with way back when I was first nursing, and she is essentially living my life but 4 years ahead of me. She's got 3 kids, and she's the most grounded person I've ever met. She's just goes with the flow, rolls with the punches. She's got 3 amazing kids, and if my kids can turn out, anything is.
Well, you got 4 years.
Well,
you've always got 4 years to creep up to get to that point.
Yeah, but she's the one. Like, if I have any parenting questions or need advice, then she's the one I go to.
Awesome.
So.
Do you reach out and ask for advice?
Not as often as I should. I'm not stubborn in some areas of my life, but in others I'm very stubborn, and I don't like to admit when I've done things wrong.
Sure.
But I'm trying hard to do that with the kids, to admit that I've not maybe done things as I should.
Most gifted or favourite book?
I don't really have I just read before bed, so it's usually just like trashy kind of stuff. But I did read a book. I wrote it down because I can't remember her name. She's of Sunshine Coast local. Postcards from Old Age by Stella Edmondson.
Okay.
She is this really cool chick. She's in her 80s now, I think, and she has changed careers like 7 times in her life. She became a world champion taekwondo champion when she was in her 70s.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And she's never let age define her, and never let, being stuck in a career define who she is. She just takes life head on. And so, it's really cool to read and just hear about how she's lived her life, and she's been all over the world and taken her own path and not let anyone else tell her what she can and can't do, which is really cool.
And then finally, a guest, famous or not, that you think you'd like to see us interview on the pod?
I reckon you should interview her.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I reckon she'd be really cool.
Awesome.
And I'm sure she's still Sunny Coast local.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I'll give you a book. You never read.
I genuinely think you'll be our first return guest, because there's lots of parenting stuff that I want to talk about. But thank you so much, Karina, for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Until next time.
Yeah, it's been good.
Awesome.
All right.
That was Karina. It was so nice to sit down with her. We don't obviously get that chance to talk about parenting when we're corralling our children from the street. But we'll definitely have her on again to talk about all things raising kids, and hopefully you got something out of it, whether you're a parent or not. If you enjoy this episode or any of the episodes that we do, please subscribe where you listen to your podcasts and share the episode with anyone you think would enjoy it as well. So until next time, peace.